Hello, hello, hello. It is a Thursday. I don't know which Thursday. That's okay. So, thanks for being here. My name is Will, and today, another special guest. Man, I have been really fortunate to have some really great guests. And I mean, that's a product of, just staying busy and reaching out to people, finding people that are also part of the music community. And really, this guy who I have today really helped inspire me to start my path in the YouTube realm, music world, really. Bit of a MPC guy at first, and being able to get the knowledge base on board to use Ableton in a performance way was so gratifying. And so today I've got my former instructor. His name is Eric Hawk. His name is Eric Hawkins, but he goes by Hawk. And I'm going to go ahead and bring him in here in just a second. But what I did want to just mention real quickly is some upcoming shows. Next week, we're going to have 83 Media Productions, and then we're going to have some more guests. Netmaker will be here, and also I have a couple other special guests that are lined up, but I don't want to give them away too early. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this week's guest, and I want to bring you guys.
I met Will in one of my Ableton Live classes, the Performing with Ableton Live class, which was great, and he did a fantastic job, I got to say. He really busted out all his chops and all his gear and connected them all, and it was a lot of fun. So I teach music production for Berklee Online. I've been doing that for almost a dozen years at this point in time, since the beginning of Berklee Online. It's a lot of fun. I spend about half of my time teaching for Berklee Online, and then the other half of my time I run my own record label. I'm an artist myself. I have a few different projects that I'm always working on, and also always working on cues for film and TV placements. So it's a great combination because I get to compose, I get to do my music, and then I get to talk about it. Because I mean, the last thing I ever want to do is what I call ivory towering it, where you're just talking about everything theoretically and you're not doing it. You got to be out there doing it. And then if I'm out there doing it, my students, my Berklee Online students, can benefit basically from my mistakes. If I'm out there in front making the mistakes, I can share that with them and say, hey, by the way, maybe it's not such a good idea to do it this way. Yeah.
To do it this way, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. To do it this way.
So he is an artist himself. He's got a lot of material. Actually, we put in the description for you guys to check out. Some of his past projects, some of the stuff he's working on now. He's got a great T-shirt on. You see that? I don't know if we can get a good look at that thing. I got one myself. You can pick these up. Get in touch with Hawk, or there might be something in the description for that.
I think there's a link down there. I think I gave you a link to go straight to the T-shirt store that we're using, Threadless.
I got a mug too. So
yeah, the mugs are cool.
Yeah, they are. They're really cool. So really, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give Hawk the floor. And I'm gonna try and do my best to produce it on this side. We actually have a couple different sources. We're trying something new. This is a very experimental type process. We've got several different emails being used as sources for different camera angles, and now I'll control them from my end. So we're going to give it a try. If you're into Ableton, if you're into vintage drum machines, or even vintage equipment, because he's not just about drum machines. I've seen a lot of his stuff. He's got a lot of keyboards, really nice stuff. So he's going to give us a little insight on connecting external MIDI gear to Ableton. So let's get a couple of these sources in here and see if we can do a little demonstration of some sort.
Yeah, we're doing the multi-camera thing today. We've got the Ableton live screen there. We've got the drum machine here, and then there's push over here too. So the object today is to take a vintage drum machine, this vintage drum machine right here, but it could be any vintage drum machine, and plug it in as an external sound source to Ableton Live. But not just an external sound source, but also a sound source that we can actually control from Ableton Live. So I'm going to take you through that whole process, and then when I'm done showing you how that all works, then I passed a song along to Will that he can play as sort of a demonstration of what can be done with a vintage drum machine. And before I get into it, the kind of the obvious question always is like, well, but Ableton Live has all these sounds in it. It has samples of vintage drum machines in it. It has these great virtual synths, and you can buy all these virtual synths. But here's what's different about the actual hardware pieces. First of all, these hardware pieces, this one is from 1998, so it's 21 years old almost. And it still works as good as the day that it was manufactured. Just got a battery replacement on it, and that's about it. And each one of these sound modules, these vintage sound modules, they have their own personality. They have their own sound. They have their own audio outputs, which you plug into your DAW. And so they really do sound different than just the samples inside of your DAW. And as a music producer myself, and something I'm always trying to encourage with my students is that, you know, try and find those unique sound sources to imprint your own voice on your productions. Maybe you just have one drum machine, but you use it for all of your tracks, and that becomes part of your sound. Nobody else has that sound because, frankly, nobody else is, you know, not that many people are pulling these old drum machines out and using them, or old synth modules out. Or even the new synth modules, things that are being manufactured from Korg and Roland and Behringer. So yeah, so using these external pieces of gear they're fun. They bring a new flavor to your sound, and they're really physical because you can put your hands on them and you can play the knobs and buttons, and that's half the fun right there. So, all right.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're looking at the Ableton Live screen right now, and let's start with what you're going to need. Obviously, you'll need one of these vintage drum machines, and preferably you'll need one with MIDI in on it. And on the back of this drum machine, right there, we have MIDI inputs and outputs here. There's my input. I have a cable going in and MIDI out, but we're just coming in right now, so that's the MIDI input right there. And our audio outputs on this drum machine right here. And that is going to an audio interface. So the audio outputs are going to the input of the audio interface here. It's a little PreSonus audio interface. And on the back of this PreSonus audio interface is a MIDI port. And you see that same orange cable there. So that, let's see if I can get this. So that is my MIDI input and my MIDI output on the audio interface. And so you're going to need MIDI connection as well. So the MIDI connection is for the drum sound control, the drum notes, the MIDI drum notes, and then audio is for the actual sound. And not all interfaces have, actually I'm still over here on this camera, not all interfaces have MIDI on it. So if you don't have an interface that has MIDI on it, grab one of these. just a MIDI cable. So this is like USB on one side, and it's MIDI on the other side. And these range from like usually from like 29 to 39 bucks. And this one's an M Audio Uno, and that works great as well.
Amazon also has those for like really cheap if you want to go really cheap.
Totally.
Yep.
I think I got that one from Sweetwater. There's a bunch of different versions of those nowadays as well. All right. So
Lisa, you're gonna need to know this. So Lisa's in the chat. She's got a ton of analog gear, and she's gonna be getting into Ableton real soon.
Cool. So. Yeah, it's the perfect combination. So you can see that in Ableton right now. I have actually, well, obviously you're going to have to, I mean, I'm sure you're at this point, everybody's at this point already, but you will of course have to have your MIDI drivers and your audio drivers hooked up here. So these are the MIDI drivers that were installed, that I installed for the PreSonus.
And this is Mac too, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, this one's Mac. It's the same on the PC side in terms of the drivers you're going to need to install. Unless it's class compliant USB, in which case you wouldn't need to install drivers. And then right here is an audio channel. And this audio channel, I have inputs 1 and 2 from my audio interface here. Inputs 1 and 2 from my audio interface. So my audio interface right there. So 1, 2, and 1, 2 output here. And then let's look at Ableton Live again. And we have our inputs right here. So there's my input 1 and 2, and this is my audio input, right?
Yep.
And so that's the sound from my drum machine. I play the pads here. And you can see the audio coming in. So now I can press play and just play a little beat from one of the patterns inside of the drum machine. And, you know, that's great. So we got audio coming in. So that's the first part of the connection. The second part of the connection now is getting our MIDI happening. And so here we have a MIDI channel. And the MIDI channel I have assigned to be, so there's a MIDI channel, and it's going to my audio box, which has my MIDI interface on it. And it's going to channel 1. And now, when I come over here and switch the camera over to push here, push with all its neon colors. Mm-hmm. And this note right here is C1. And if I've connected all the MIDI correctly, this should play the kick drum on the drum machine. And there it is. That is the kick drum on the drum machine, if I play drum machine. So I have MIDI control, and now I can literally play this from push. So those are the two component elements we need for complete control. I can literally go in here and record a clip this way. So I'm not gonna, I can't do anything in time right now because of the latency running through StreamYard, but just to show you that if I go into record here, I can record a clip and put some MIDI notes in. And then I can play this back. And there are the MIDI notes. So that's all the connections at there most basic, showing you that I can literally control a 1998 vintage drum machine from I think it's 98, could be older, from push here.
So do you have control over the, values manually? Like, as in, if you wanted to make, does the drum machine itself have like a velocity sensitivity to it that can be managed within the Ableton project?
Yeah, yeah. These are velocity sensitive pads, so if I play them softly or I play them hard, it responds to velocity sensitivity. It will even actually, this is one of the more modern vintage drum machines that I have, and this one will respond to some MIDI control messages like volume. So you could send volume messages. I might respond to pitch. I haven't tried that. But the answer is yes.
And I know that you've gotten into some of the sequential stuff because we did a little project together where you took the Sequential Tom and did a bunch of really advanced techniques as far as advanced for the year.
Yeah, the Sequential Tom was actually a decade earlier. It was like 1984.
Yes.
And that was the very beginning days of MIDI. And Dave over at Sequential Circuits was one of the people that helped build the MIDI spec. And so Sequential Circuits at the time was putting really advanced MIDI implementation into their drum machines. So yeah.
And that's an incredible drum machine too. I mean, the fact that you have all of that, I mean, the kind of stuff you have control over isn't found in a lot of stuff today, And,
yeah, there's some crazy stuff. So the one drum machine he's talking about is this one here.
Pull that right in. Beauty.
So Sequential Tom.
Is that a 8-bit
sound cartridge? Yeah, this one's 8-bit. This one is 8-bit. Put this down. Yeah, so price-wise on these drum machines, this one, the Sequential Tom is a bit more esoteric, and those are starting to get a little expensive. They're around $600, but the Alesis ones are about 100. You get them as low as 75, and they make 2 of them. This is the one I really like here, the B for black.
What is that? Oh my God.
This is the same drum machine, released a couple of years later from the HR16, the gray one. And this one is, it's black, so it's cool. It's like, come to the dark side, Luke.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah, and all the directions are here for you in case you lose the manual.
Right.
So I love that. And it's got great sounds. It's got a different set of sound chips in it than the gray one. The gray one has, this one has some more like, for the time, the hip hop sounds in the mid 90s, they're a little cheesy, but they're fun. And these ones are 16-bit, so the sound quality on these is pretty good.
That's great.
So over here on back on Ableton Live is I used two tracks to do this. I used a MIDI track and an audio track. So the MIDI is sending MIDI notes out to the drum machine, and the audio track is bringing the audio back in to Ableton Live. And the reason why I did that is just to show everybody what these two components are. And students often get really confused about like what is MIDI versus what is audio, because in a lot of our DAWs today, they kind of look the same. So they're 2 completely different components that you need to work with. One, MIDI is for the control, and the audio is for the audio signal coming in. And I'm using 2 tracks, which is pretty not very efficient when you're getting a big session together. But you can absolutely do this. So there's a device inside of Ableton, and it's called the external instrument device here. And yeah, let me find my mouse. There's my mouse. So there's the external instrument device. And I can take this and drag it onto a track, and here it is on a track. And that's what it looks like. That's the external instrument device. And lo and behold, the external instrument device, let me turn these guys off here. Lo and behold, the external instrument device has a MIDI output. So, and there's my audio box MIDI output. There's the channel 1, it's good. And it also has an audio input. And I'm coming in stereo on 1 and 2. And now, instead of having those 2 tracks, I can do all this on 1 track. Just arm this track here, and so that's the next step there, is to do that, because that's great. And now, same thing. I can go ahead and sequence something on a clip, but I'm just using 1 track now. And there are the notes. Right?
So I see that you have a couple of the monitoring off, and you have a couple auto, and none of them are checked as in. Can you explain that at all for the people that might not understand what that is?
Yes, that's a good one, Will. And previously, just a minute ago, I had set this one to in. And when the channel is on in, it's basically the door is always open for any audio signal coming in. And when it's set to auto, it intelligently switches between playing what you have recorded and playing the input. So basically, you think of it this way: when you're stopped, you're not going to be listening to what you recorded. So then you're going to hear your input. And when you press play, if there's something recorded on the track, you're going to hear what's recorded on the track. So it just automatically switches. And that's the default mode that it's usually in. And it works most of the time for most purposes. But sometimes, like when I have the combination of the MIDI track and I need to create an aux input channel, and that's when I literally have it just set to in, always on.
And so with your setup right now, I can see that you've got only 1 armed for recording. And in the Ableton settings and the preferences, we have the ability to highlight more than 1, to arm more than 1. Could you just demonstrate for the people how to arm more than 1 track?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the performing with live days, huh?
Absolutely.
So right now, this mode right here is called the ARM exclusive mode, where I can only arm 1 track at a time. And when I arm this track, this is the track with the external instrument, it knows that I want to hear what's coming in. But sometimes you'll want to arm more than 1 track, what Will's talking about, and that's if you, for example, are using more than 1 instrument, or you're going to record something, multi-track something with several instruments all coming in at the same time. And for that, we need to go to our preferences. Go to our preferences here, and we would need to go to our let's see here. Record warp launch preferences, the tab. And there's, under recording here, there's this something called exclusive. And there's an exclusive function for ARM and solo. So if we turn ARM off, and now we can arm multiple tracks at the same time. We can arm them all. So generally speaking, you're only going to need to do that when you are multi-tracking. The rest of the time, just arming 1 is usually just fine.
I actually got a question here. Let's. This right here is something that I think a lot of people, and maybe you can, maybe you can't. We got a question from Philback. Can you see the question
Yeah.
there?
External instrument device is nice for Volcas.
Right on the screen, right on our feed.
Which feed am I looking at here? Sorry.
Right on the main, right on our main, our. Okay, it just says Ableton link explained. Is there? Do you have an?
Oh, Ableton link explained. Oh, I see. Wait, so I'm looking at the live comments and then okay, gotcha. All right. Can we explain Ableton link? Yes. You know how I just put together the MIDI cable? I like physically plugged in the MIDI cable because obviously this drum machine from the mid-90s doesn't have Ableton Link enabled. It's not Ableton Link enabled. Ableton Link, you can think of Ableton Link as MIDI synchronization, wireless MIDI synchronization. So any device that is Ableton Link, can be Ableton Link enabled, has the ability to sync with Ableton. For example, if I have a little app in my phone here, it has the ability to turn on the Ableton link, and then Ableton will send out clock to the device wirelessly to this device on my phone. So that's what Ableton link is. I use it when I have the Soundbrenner Pulse metronome. You've seen me in some of my videos, and I use that. So I have a metronome on my arm that is linked to Ableton Live and literally gives me a tap on my arm like this.
That's what that is.
To give me the tempo control, to give me the tempo, even though I'm not listening, I don't need to be even listening to a beat, but I can be playing in time with Ableton Live because it's giving me a tempo tap.
That's very cool. I didn't even know that's what that was. I also wanted to take Ableton Link one step further because Ableton Link doesn't even need Ableton. You can actually use the apps in conjunction with machines that have Ableton Link. So my MPCX, my Force, other Ableton enabled devices will sync to apps without the use of Ableton. They'll sync to each other, so wirelessly. So
totally.
It's a pretty neat concept to not need the wires, but there are some downsides to it. What I found is that if you're using beat repeats in effect racks and you have Ableton Link enabled, it will send the beat repeats all wonky. It won't keep them in time. It'll skip one because a link session is not perfectly 123.00, and it doesn't, I guess the effects the beat repeat doesn't know how to divide down to the most. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works, but for whatever reason, I get some weird results when I use Link.
The fact is that, and I don't work for Ableton. I teach the classes, I work with the software and stuff, and Link is really amazing. But it certainly has its limitations because we are talking about basically wireless synchronization. And when you're dealing with wireless synchronization, there's a lot of data. And when you're dealing with music, we're talking about milliseconds that can affect the feel and timing of something. And computers aren't, when you're trying to sync them wirelessly, there's just a big latency issue there, big delay. So it's not easy. I've had really good success with one device in link mode, but when I've gone to multiple devices, it's been a bit of a train wreck. And I'm sure that as the bandwidth continues to improve, the technology continues to improve, I'm sure that they will continue to make all of that sync better. But for me, the old school, like actually using a MIDI cable and a physical device, that always provides the best results, especially when I'm performing live and doing something live on stage. It's like, you don't want to mess around with anything. I want to be able to press play. There is nothing interfering short of somebody taking an axe and chopping my MIDI cable in half. That is going to stop that sync from traveling down my MIDI cable in time.
I have invested so much money in MIDI cables. It's insane. I probably have 50 of them now, and they're just going everywhere. But it can be a cable management issue. But you know what? You do need to have that hardwired connection if you're live, for sure.
Well, and obviously with all the gear, if you're doing everything inside of your laptop, it just doesn't matter.
Right.
But as soon as you start introducing all the gear, then you start introducing all the cables, and things can become a it's called the cable spaghetti pretty quickly.
Yeah, it does. And it's hard to, once you start that process and you get that jumbled mess, it's hard to like get it back again. You know, once you've got cables everywhere, you just have to do a complete redo and start all over again. So
yeah.
yeah, maybe one day we'll be completely wireless, but there's just too many variables right now for the wireless stuff.
And even, and again, you know, like I was saying in the beginning too, I mean, you can go completely wireless, just like you can put everything inside of your one computer. But and we have the capability now of running so many virtual instruments inside of just one computer. But having those external pieces of gear for their own flavors, for their own physical controls, is just another. It feels much more like a real instrument. There's no other way of putting it.
Right. Yeah. And so I know that we talked about some of the projects that you had done, and I think that you had sent me a link to one of the tracks that you had put together.
But wait. You thought I was done with the drum machine connections, but there's more. There's one more level. We've done the first level, which is the, you know, understanding the two, both the audio input and the MIDI. We've done the next level, which is an external instrument. But if you notice, we're working with a drum machine, and everybody that uses Ableton Live knows that drum rack is awesome. And when you're in drum rack mode and you have drum rack on there, you get, well, here's drum rack here. I've dragged drum rack onto this channel there, drum rack. And when you get drum rack, you notice that what happens is the whole interface changes over here on push, and now we can sequence beats, right? The whole beat sequencer. I love the beat sequencer. It's just brilliant. So how do we control, how can we get my drum machine over here? That's the next question. And what's so awesome about Ableton Live is that, yeah, so here's C1, right? And we know that that kick drum's on C1. So we can take this external instrument right here, and we can drag it to the pad. Boom. And now we can assign the MIDI output of this to channel 1 of my audio box, and the MIDI input of this. And now, and I can do sequencing on here, which means
I don't want to stop you. I want you to unpack that, because this is an introduction to the MIDI external stuff. He just took a full external MIDI instrument and dragged it into a single pad. Yep. So now he can do all the stuff that he was doing in that track, he can do in a pad.
And if I turn on my actually turn on my audio channel over here. So again, just to review that again, I can take any external instrument right here, and I can literally drag it onto a pad. So if that is my snare drum, and then I can set it to go out to my whatever I'm controlling. In this case, the output for MIDI output to the Alesis. The Alesis will then receive that MIDI information, and then I can literally program a pattern on here. And in this particular case, for some reason, at the moment, there it is. Want to go to the snare drum, and just to show you that I have the notes that I programmed on there in the drum rack mode, and I can. So yeah, it's pretty great because you can literally throw anything you want onto a pad in the drum rack, and from there set up your external instrument just like you would on a regular external instrument here. Only I'm actually using the drum sequencer.
Right. So you could essentially have like 64 instruments on a single, or however many pads are on that thing. I can't remember how many pads are on there.
Yeah,
you could have a piece of hardware for each pad.
Yeah, you could. you could take one of those, like maybe something like if you wanted to create your own analog drum machine kit or something like that, you could take a bunch of these Behringers and program. Each one of these Behringers could be its own analog sound, like a kick drum or a snare drum, and then you could set it all up so that you were controlling and pattern sequencing directly from push.
He says Volcas.
Yes, absolutely.
Chord Volcas.
Mm-hmm.
Good one, Phil. Absolutely.
Chord the Volcas, and anything, basically any piece of external gear can be controlled. The whole point of this is like, yes, you can control it from push, and you can control it and sequence it inside of Ableton Live. And I'd like to point out that one really important thing about this whole system with Ableton Live, not only are you getting the sound, like the sound of the Volcas, but you're also saving on processing power inside of your computer. So you could have, like I was just saying, you could have a whole bunch of these devices out here in external instrument land, and using Ableton Live for all your control to launch with clips like I just did here with these clips here. And that's using absolutely no processing power in the computer because it's just MIDI data coming out.
Yeah, and also you're not having to flip back and forth between a bunch of different instruments too.
Yeah.
When you're on your push, you're constantly having to navigate around a push, trying to get to each one, having to read the print to see which instrument you have, which one's active, and then going back to the session side. So it's like you're saving not only ergonomics but CPU. So
yeah. And I just demonstrated how you could actually do a pattern sequence inside using Push's drum pattern sequencer. But the fact is that you can also use the pattern sequencers that are on the drum machines themselves.
Right.
And there are a lot of DAW DAW-less jamming videos that people are literally programming their beat on the drum machine at the same time. And that's where the whole sync thing comes in. That's really important because this needs to be clocked to Ableton Live. And that's the MIDI cable is the same situation, only the MIDI cable will come out of Ableton Live into your drum machine, and then your drum machine, you go into the MIDI preferences inside of your drum machine and set it to play its sequences when it sees sync coming in from Ableton Live. So you can press start Ableton Live and your drum machine patterns will play along right in the drum machine too.
What about the opposite direction? So last night I was in a hotel and I was using my Deluge to control Ableton. Does that clock out? Does that have MIDI clock out, that drum machine?
Yes, it does, actually. It has a MIDI out and it has a MIDI clock out. It will send sync out.
So you could essentially turn your external sync on in your live and hit play on your drum machine and it would start your session.
Yep, yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I've done that a lot where I actually like to do that because if I'm using a piece of hardware to run my external sync, it's pretty much always running. Sometimes the computer will crash. But if the computer crashes and my hardware is still running sync, it just keeps playing and it doesn't stop. So there have been a lot of live show situations where I've used, my preference has been to use the Roland, the MC505 as a clock source. But any of those new Roland drum boxes will work as a clock source. They all send out MIDI beat clock.
So you have the ones that were just released recently?
No, the one I have is an MC505, which is from mid-90s.
Gotcha. So, yeah, they just released all kinds of stuff that people are going to be getting into real soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So so you had said about your track that you had sent me. I was going to tell you that I'm not sure if we had a miscommunication somewhere. If you can resend me that or screen share that track and we can play it live.
I can send you the link, and then you can just grab the link from like my YouTube channel, because I think like when we were playing around with it before, you had to actually play it from your side in order to hear it, I think. But before I send you that link, so the same thing I did here where I was controlling the drum machine inside of Ableton Live is this drum machine here. This big, huge one. I've got two. This is one of my favorites. So this is the RX5, the Yamaha RX5, and it's at the level it almost has its own synth engine in it. It can produce all sorts of crazy sounds, and they're all 12-bit sounds. So this is a 12-bit drum machine, and I believe that was 1987. That one.
Is that Airwolf?
Pardon me?
Airwolf?
Airwolf.
The TV show Airwolf, wasn't that used to program Airwolf?
Probably. Actually, that sounds probably. I know Jan Hammer used it a lot for because he was a big Yamaha fan for all the Miami Vice soundtracks and stuff like that. And yeah, Airwolf, that was the same time period too. Yeah. The thing, it's a really incredible drum machine. It takes cards in the back. That one is around $250, so still pretty inexpensive, believe it or not. I mean, for that one. But yeah, we use that on this song. And let me get you. Let me find the link here.
So, have you had any good scores recently in the drum machine department?
Yeah, supposedly there's. I've got a SP12 coming my way. That. Is covered with rat poop.
I've seen it.
Yeah, if you look at, I've got a picture of it up on my Instagram page.
Looks like a gem.
Yeah, it's like I don't have a whole lot of hope that it's actually working, but the guy is a friend of a friend, and he's like, hey, I got this drum machine, check this out. I'm like, oh, really?
Right.
So yeah, we'll see.
Project either way.
Yeah, it could be a project, but even so, that's a classic. That was from 1983, I believe, and it is a classic. So even if I can't get it working, it'll be nice to look at.
It is, yeah, exactly. Once it's clean, but yeah,
yeah, once it's clean. Yeah. So let me find this song. Hold on. So this is off of the new multi-track album.
This is the Sunrise, featuring Caleb Jacobs. Caleb
Jacobs and this drum machine.
And this is okay.
Then I fall through the night, but our spirits awake to the light pink pastels on fire, feeling more than fine. The sun illumines the kingdom, the lion's heart, and a brand new star piece beyond a reason, and everything we are. This sunrise is alive, alive. This sunrise is alive with fire. This sunrise gives me something I can't believe in. This sunrise is alive, alive. This sunrise is alive with fire. This sunrise gives me something I can't believe in. This sunrise is alive with fire. This sunrise gives me something I can't believe it. This sunrise is alive, alive. This sunrise is alive with fire. This sunrise gives me something I can't believe it.
Absolutely beautiful.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that that was that 1987 12-bit drum machine. There are obviously a few other sounds mixed in there, but the whole, even the snare rolls going up for the crescendos, that was that drum machine.
So people, look, he just showed you how to do this, and he just showed you what it can do. I don't know what else to say. If you want to get some more information, if you want to get in touch with Hawk, there's some stuff in the description. You can find him on Facebook. You can find him on Instagram. He's also a great instructor. Berklee, I highly recommend anybody that wants a education, either to progress your knowledge base or a really good foundation to get yourself started, check out Berklee online. And do you guys do Pro Tools, and you guys do Logic, or is it Ableton, and is there any other DAW programs?
Yeah, well, for me personally, I teach a Pro Tools 101 class, and then we also do a bunch of other Pro Tools classes, including Pro Tools 110. I also teach a Reason class, if you like all the virtual instruments inside of Reason. And then we also have Logic classes. We have a Cubase class. Yeah, we pretty much cover all the basic DAW programs. And then there are other classes like my producing drum beats class, that we call it an agnostic class. You can come in and you can use anything you want. You want to use Studio One, you want to use Fruity Loops, you can, as long as it's got the capabilities, and we'll outline what the capabilities are that you need to be able to handle in order to take the class. And then, so as long as you know, you just got to know your DAW.
For anybody that wants to know, when I got with Berklee, I literally had just bought a computer and I knew nothing. I did not know how to install a driver. Like I didn't really know anything. And the people there, the nice people, I think some of them were student volunteers. They helped get me set up. They've answered all my questions. Hawk was awesome during the process. So I highly recommend. Hawk, is there anything else you want to tell the people before we close it out for the day?
Yeah, with regards to this particular topic, since I have all the gear out right now on my desk, I'm actually going to go ahead and shoot a little video tutorial that will be up. Hopefully, I'll get it up in the next couple of weeks on my YouTube channel. And also, I'm always real responsive. I love responding to people's questions on my YouTube channel. So if you have questions about something or one of the topics that I present in one of my YouTube videos, you just ask the question down underneath the video, and I'll get back to you.
And you can find his channel in the description as well.
Yes.
So go and check his stuff out. He's always putting up new content, always working with new people, and he's just a great guy. So reach out, get in touch. Absolutely. And I'd love to have you back sometime. Let's see, just make one quick check to make sure nobody has any other questions. And okay. So here's a question for you. Maybe this might be something that you can give, maybe just some idea of what people look into for cost for something like this. Berklee, they have like payment programs. Do you know of?
They do. I'm not. That's not my department. I'm just a music production instructor. You'd want to talk with the student advisors, so you can just pick up the phone and call them. And there's all kinds of financial aid and scholarships. So a class could cost nothing, or it could cost like, I think the top end of some of the classes, if you're to pay full pop, they go up to like $1,500 for a class. But it really ranges there. So it totally depends on what your need base is, and whether you're taking the class for credit or non-credit, how many credits it is. So I'm sure there's something that will fit what you and your friend need.
Yep, absolutely. And I know Mac, and if he's into Ableton or his friends are into Ableton, they'll definitely get into it and do it right. So, all right. Well, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. So thank you. I hope somebody out there gets some good use out of this information, either on playback or you were here for the experience. And
yeah,
I'll speak for myself. This was great. And I'm excited for next week. So Hawk, thank you very much again for being here, my friend.
Thank you, Will. It's awesome. Anytime, man.
All right, guys. We're going to see you next week. And that's it. Peace, guys.
Ciao.